Good morning and welcome to Handling Problems, Conflicts, and Mistakes as a New Supervisor. This will be a review of my Capstone project for developing online learning at Plymouth State University. My name's Timothy Robinson. First, I want to apologize for the delay on all this. There was some unexpected circumstances this summer that kind of really changed a lot of things, and the busyness of the rest of my life didn't help keep up with this, but this is a picture of me with the rest of the crew from the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Task Force out of Massachusetts down at in Katy, Texas, awaiting assignment. Less than a month later, I was down in Florida helping the Boy Scouts do some recovery work on their properties from Hurricane Irma. And most recently, I had to have rotator cuff surgery on my right shoulder, which has made this a little more difficult, with my right hand being my dominant hand. But enough with excuses, because as Yoda says here, excuses you have, know where they will get you. I just want to thank you for the consideration and give me a little extra time in this. Hopefully, I can meet the desired outcomes you were looking for. I just tried to upload this separately, but I guess I'll just review it, and then it's all part of the project as a package here for you. The upload thing is closed on the Moodle website for Plymouth, but I will send you this video, and hopefully we can figure out what we need to do from here. So this is my storyboard. The first section of the lesson was to be introduction to conflict resolution. This got obviously moved around a little bit once you'll see the lesson. You'll see these things are kind of in there, but it's not quite to this card as was given to us by our with the card was given to us by our partner Primex, who helped us with the actors and the simulations. We all thought it was important that we have a student go through and learn their personal conflict resolution style, mainly just so they understand how they kind of deal with these on a regular basis or naturally, and so that they know that they may need to change based on the situation. We did talk about finding your voice, and we didn't really go to this reflective journal thing. It was a suggestion from one of the SMEs. It just didn't flow right. I added a guided practice discussion forum, which you'll see later on when we go through the lesson. Critical decision making. This was the toughest part because it didn't exist well in any texts, but it through the SMEs and through myself, because we were dealing with a subject that it's what I do full time. I'm a supervisor for a fire department. I run this program at the fire academy part time, but so I know that this is kind of what's done on a regular basis with people, but it's not well documented in the text from the literature. So we really had to rely on myself and some SMEs to kind of really come up with an idea here. We came up with this immediate versus delayed response, meaning there are certain supervisory situations, at least in the fire service and probably other emergency services like police, EMS, construction, where there may be some dangerous things that are going on, and the supervisor has to step up and take action immediately just to stop, anybody from getting injured or killed. And immediate action situations might also include those that might be damaging to the organization or even to the individual's reputation. So like a social media post that's just starting to maybe go viral, might even be a HIPAA violation, like a picture of an accident scene. And so we want a supervisor to step in and at least stop that damage from getting any worse. So that's what we mean by immediate action. It allows the supervisor to buy time and also works on that risk reduction and risk management. The delayed response is more traditional, normal thing that you would see in more of a regular office setting, where you would have somebody come into the office privately, you would sit them down at the table and talk with them and try to work out how they can change their behavior and make things work. In our model, and you'll see the model in the lesson, we have the immediate action kind of just buys you the time to get to that more delayed or traditional setting. So one of the recommendations of one of our SMEs was to do like a sorting of situations so that when they get the simulations not the first time, they were just trying to decide whether there was immediate action by the supervisor or delayed action or, like I said, the more traditional response. So we did add this into the lesson, and you'll see that in a little bit. So the bulk of this project was really these video simulations that are coming up. There's three of them. Video simulation 1 and 2 are online, and video simulation 3 is an actual in-person video simulation. So simulation 1 is several branching choices. It's all done in Articulate. And then afterwards, there's a peer feedback discussion forum that we have so people can talk about how they ended up where they did, and then kind of what the next steps are to deal with the employee. And here's a graphic of one of the storyboard that we had for simulation 1. So simulation 1's a driving simulation, and this is going to be an immediate action simulation where the officer has to stop the driver from driving recklessly so they don't get in an accident. Here are the remaining branched out options. I think the only thing we didn't do was right in here was this particular one, the filming of the back seat of the fire truck. But we were able to get through the simulation and still accomplish our goals with that simulation. Simulation 2, same is a branching choice simulation. It's built in Articulate. And again, there's a peer feedback discussion forum afterwards. Here's the storyboard for simulation 2. This is a social media post. And it's kind of a tricky one because we do talk about some social media posts being bad enough, especially if they're HIPAA violations, that we want the employee to stop right now. But if the employee stops the action the supervisor stops the action right now, the employee is going to give them some feedback, and they may have wanted to choose to go into a private office. So the information contained in this conclusion slide, I think this the kind of storyboarding, this was done a while ago now, was to have this after the simulations. It's not really how we went because it feeds more naturally to be just in a contained lesson before you get to the simulations, and so this information is kind of included there. So I don't want to say it's outside the purview of this because I don't have a video. I won't be able to show you all the video that we did for the in-person simulation. So our class is a hybrid class, and the design is to have students do things online and then come in class and apply that knowledge. And so the two online simulations are kind of the primer for this in-person simulation. Again, it's all shot with video, but the person is actually interacting with the video. So they're sitting in a room, kind of an office setting. The actor in the video kind of comes into the room, and they're actually talking to this. And there's obviously a facilitator that's going to make notes and then have a discussion with the student afterwards, as well as an operator for the mile range software that will then make the branching choices based on what the student says. So we have already done this with one full class. We've run everybody through this with a fairly good success. So the software really works well, and the students get a lot out of it. But the whole idea was to give the students an opportunity to do this in person and to deal with the situation as it was going down with a facilitator or an instructor who's going to sit there and then kind of hot wash it with them afterwards. We also had them do a reflection questionnaire afterwards, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So here's the storyboard for the in-person simulation, and you can see it's in an office setting. Originally, our original plan was to have a female employee come in and kind of complain about having to do different things as the new employee. You can kind of read through the different lines there, but reality, we shot this twice. We shot this with a female employee and a male employee, and the male employee was actually a little more difficult and is the one that we're using currently as the primary one, and then the female employee is the backup. So if the situation doesn't go well, we allow the student to kind of flounder through the first one, Then they'll be coached uh, how they may be able to do it better, and then they're given the backup scenario right afterwards, so they can kind of play and hopefully end on a win. Here's more of the storyboard, and like I said, there's different branch choices here. And again, the setup is this is not your regular employee, and she comes into the office and starts complaining that nobody's doing housework, nobody's helping her with things, and then in addition to that, she kind of puts you on the spot because you're not the regular officer. So we kind of had to make the condition that in so that you weren't the regular officer, because we know our audience, and our audience would basically say, well, I wouldn't allow this to have happened and gotten to this point. So we kind of had to remove that argument out of the equation. And here are the final scenes. Some of them end up with the people like the male or female actor basically, oh, I didn't understand. I'm glad somebody finally explained it to me. So explaining kind of their role as a newer employee and why they are tasked with some of the things, some of the scut work, for a lack of a better term. And we kind of try to get the students to get across that they have to work with this employee to understand that doing some of these menial tasks is part of the trust building with the crew. Relationship dynamics are obviously very important when you work in an environment where lives are on the line and each other's lives are on the line. So, we allow the new supervisor to kind of work through this so they can learn how to explain this better to employees in their future. You can also make a mistake, and the employee will also slam the door and walk off the scene. So this is our Moodle shell. Obviously, it's just similar to the one you use at Plymouth State. We obviously changed the graphics a little bit. We call it Noodle, which is, just kind of a play on the whole Moodle as being the background product and New Hampshire being state of New Hampshire. Uh, we were one of the first agencies in the state to kind of go to online learning and using our own platform. And so we've been doing this for a little while. So here's kind of a whole course, and I'm not going to run through all of it, meaning, Fire Officer 1 from soup to nuts. Obviously, we were building a lesson here for handling problems, conflicts, and mistakes, which is down in this particular setup in week 4. So there are other things that we don't have online lessons built out for. So most of our course here is taught in the Ken Robinson flipped classroom format. So the students are uh, required, or at least highly, pressured to do reading and quiz before they come to class. So normally they have these quizzes, and then they show up to class. And we also have, outside of this week's particular discussion forum, got rolled into this thing. But if we go back to a different week here, so they come in, they have the resources for the week, the quizzes, and then their discussion forum to kind of prime the pump for a discussion in the classroom. This particular week we kind of changed that around because we added this online lesson. I did start out the same way, though, that the expectation is that you read and quiz on the chapter prior to coming to the lesson. We do ask one or a couple of questions during the online lesson, but we still felt that it was we were going to stick with our format for at least now, just kind of see how this works. Unfortunately, when I added this scoring package in, there was some changes made by IT on the restrictions. So when I had added the simulations earlier in the year, which these we've used with students before, we were able to have the based on prior activities, and the activities bar when I go to restrict access now is not there. So I want to move this chapter 12 up to the scoring package here, and then so they have to complete the quiz and then do the scoring package and then complete the discussion forum before they go to the first simulation. So that'll be some changes that are coming up. But let's go to our lesson. So here we have the welcome screen and title screen for our lesson. The lesson's done in Articulate, obviously, and we'll slide into the next slide. Be amused. The next slide I narrated, and I tried also auto narration and articulate for this particular project. You have just been pinned with a new You have just been pinned with a new badge. Your first couple of days as a supervisor, you have been worried about going to your first fire as the first to company. Then it happens. It can be many things, but it's always in some form of a conflict between members of the company. You now realize that as a supervisor, going to fires might be one of the easier parts of your job. We are here. As you can see, I narrated that slide as well as learn to use Video Scribe to make the the graphic or the video. So it was an interesting process to learn how to use Video Scribe, and I used it a little bit later in here to do some more lecture stuff. So it's just not audio or just not bullet points on the screen. So there is some narration and some actually, it's mostly writing on the screen from after this point. But we'll take a couple look at some of these other little video lessons as we go through this.
We are here to help you deal with issues better as their eyes. You as a first-level supervisor is a servant to both the organization and its members. We hope that you may be able to intervene early enough into issues to prevent the HR fatality, this meaning a career damaged or lost to an action of a subordinate, that could have been corrected by a supervisor intervening early, and realigning the subordinate with the desired behavior appropriate to the workplace.
So again, here we are, we're just trying to get the student to understand. We're trying to get them to intervene and interact with employees early on and try to correct behaviors before they become big things. Eventually, if they're not handled, little things become big things, and not by not intervening or not acting, sometimes you're essentially giving unconscious permission for those acts to occur. To make this interactive, we have done some definition matching here, and just to kind of also relate back to the definitions from the textbook.
You should know the following before an event occurs: your conflict resolution style, your organization's policies, procedures, and guidelines, your authority to discipline, if necessary, as well as applicable laws and legal concepts. You will review these points in the next several slides.
So I thought it was important to kind of give an overview of what we're going to go through next. A lot of this is obviously, as in anything else, is preparation beforehand. So you should already know how to handle conflict, or how you do it, and what benefits that is for you, and what challenges that might be for you. You should know, obviously, your organization's policies, procedures, guidelines, also the collective bargaining agreement if it's a unionized department, so you know what you can and can't do. Obviously, we added down here your authority to discipline if necessary. So some people, when they get newly promoted, they don't realize that they're not the person that's going to be the end authority that terminates somebody or suspends them. That they're maybe limited in scope as to whether they can informally counsel somebody, or they can do different, they can do a written warning or verbal warning and those kind of things like that. Also, new supervisors should know what laws kind of guide them in what they should be doing with employees.
Conflict resolution styles, self-assessment. Stop here. Go to the resources section, where the blue arrow is pointing to. Download the conflict management self-assessment. Complete and score the assessment. Then proceed to the next slide for a brief explanation of conflict resolution styles.
So you can see here we have a conflict management questionnaire for the students to kind of go through, and this will help them kind of determine their conflict resolution style. This form allows them to do the scoring and then come up with what they are. If I were to do this over again, or if I had the time, I'd like to put that self-assessment questionnaire ready to articulate. I just didn't think I was going to have the bandwidth to accomplish that because of the way the scoring patterns were a little different on it, and it was going to require a fair amount of knowledge and understanding of Articulate that I didn't have, as far as how to change or weights like art scales differently based on the different questions. And so that's a project for the future.
The Thomas Kilman model of conflict management organizes 5 conflict management styles based on 2 dimensions: assertiveness and cooperativeness. People react differently to conflict or better conflicting interests. Every style has different degrees of assertiveness and cooperativeness. In other words, how much focus is on your own concerns and how much on satisfying the other person's needs. In any conflict situation, you may respond in one of several ways: by competing, accommodating, avoiding, collaborating, or compromising. The first style I would like to describe is competing. This is the win-lose approach. You act in an assertive way to achieve your goals, without seeking to cooperate, and it may be at the expense of others. This approach may be appropriate for emergencies, when time is of the essence or where you need quick, decisive action. Avoiding is when you simply avoid the issue. You're not helping others reach their goals and you're not pursuing your own. This works when the issue is trivial or when you have no chance of winning. It is also very effective when the atmosphere is emotionally charged and you need to create some space. The style collaborating can also be described as the win-win approach. This can be effective for complex scenarios where you need to find a novel solution. This can also mean reframing the challenge to create a bigger space and room for everybody's ideas. The downside is that it requires a high degree of trust, and reaching consensus can require a lot of time and effort to get everybody on board. Accommodating is when you cooperate to a high degree, and it may be at your own expense and actually work against your own goals. This approach is effective when the other party is the expert or has a better solution. It can also be effective for preserving future relations. Finally, compromising. This is the lose-lose scenario. Neither party really gets what they want. It requires a moderate level of assertiveness and cooperation. It may be appropriate for scenarios where you need a temporary solution, but the trap is to fall into compromising as an easy way out.
So that's the explanation of the conflict resolution styles. Hopefully students can draw some conclusions there on how to apply those styles, and also to avoid some of their weak, or to avoid their natural tendency to go to one area when it's not conducive to the type of situation they're dealing with. So we didn't include anything on the students' actual policies and procedures, because they're just going to have to review those on their own. We can't add them as a resource because we deal with students from probably up to 100 different fire departments on a regular basis. What we did do here is we added a survey allowing them to check off what they're allowed to do for discipline in their organization, and so we'll check a few off here. The only requirement of this is that you check at least one of these off before you move on to the next slide.
As a fire officer or first level supervisor, you should understand the following legal concepts: negligence, duty to act, standard of care, tort immunity, types of laws, statutes, regulations, etc. The role of the Occupational Health and Safety Administration. The impact of National Fire Protection Association standards on OSHA and standard of care. And sexual harassment. These concepts are covered in other sections of this course and other chapters in your text.
So that's kind of the basics of what there. I gave some credit to Deputy Chief Kurt Verone. These concepts came from a couple emails we had back and forth. He's a retired deputy chief from Providence, Rhode Island, and also an attorney. He helped me. Him and I have added these concepts into the explanatory materials in the NFPA standard for the professional qualifications for fire officers, which I'm a part of that committee through my job here at the Fire Academy.
Actively listening is a slower skill than can be practiced before you need to use it during a conflict event. When thinking of active listening, one of the first things that should come to mind is the quote, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." which is Habit 5 of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. In our profession, we tend to be problem solvers. Sometimes in haste to fix an issue, we can cut people short in conversations before we fully understand how we can help them. Below are some general steps when using active listening in a conflict situation. First, drain the emotional bubble. Second, understand the concerned person's viewpoint. Third, help the concerned person feel understood. Fourth, identify the concerned person's expectations. In the Resource tab there is an optional active listening self-assessment tool for you. Click on the video below to hear more sage advice on listening from Stephen Covey.
This is called the Indian talking stick. It was given to me by Indian chiefs after training them for several days. They run Indian nations in North America, the States and Canada. They even gave me my name, Bald Eagle. It's authentic, specially carved, beautiful. But you could use a pencil, you could use a spoon, a conch, anything. The whole idea, when they taught this to the founding fathers, most powerful communication idea and technique I have ever found. Ever.
How many are
How
frequently
many are
in meetings
frequently in
where
meetings
you
where
just
you
feel
just
the
feel
hidden
the
agenda is
hidden
operating?
agenda's operating?
I always like to
I
break
always
that
like to
down
break that
fast.
down fast.
I always like to
I always
heal
like to heal
divisions
the
in your own
divisions in
family.
your own family.
Two kids that are quarreling with each other.
with each other.
Just do this.
Just do this.
You just go up
You just
and you
go
say
up
to the
and
other
you say
person,
to the other person,
you've got
you've got
talking
the
stick.
talking stick.
I can't say
I
anything.
can't say anything.
Maybe I can ask
Maybe
a
I can
question
ask
to
a
see if
question
I
to
do
see if I do
understand your point.
understand your point.
But I can't make
But
my
I can't
point.
make my
I can't
point.
agree.
I can't agree. I
disagree.
can't disagree.
All I can do
All I can do is communicate
you feel
until you feel
understood.
understood.
As soon as you
As
feel
soon as you
understood
feel
on your
understood
point,
on your point,
then you pass
then you
the
pass
talking
the
stick
talking
or
stick
pencil
or
or
pencil
whatever
or whatever
to me.
to me.
Now it is my
Now
turn.
it is my turn.
And you are
And
quiet.
you are quiet.
And you listen
And you
with
listen
empathy
with empathy
until I
until
feel
I
understood.
feel understood.
As soon as I
As
feel
soon as I
understood,
feel understood,
I pass it
I
back to you.
pass it back to you.
Until you feel
Until you
understood,
feel
then you pass
understood,
it
then
back
you
to me.
pass it back to me.
Now what
Now
happens?
what happens
Literally,
is
it
literally
transforms
it transforms
defensive, negative energy,
into
the creative,
creative,
transforming energy.
transforming
Here's
energy.
why.
Here's why.
When you really
When you
listen to
really
another
listen to
in
another
depth
in
until they
depth
feel
until they
understood,
feel understood,
you are
you are
communicating
communicating
their worth,
their worth,
their
their
potential.
potential.
You are
You
affirming
are
them.
affirming
It is
them.
so
It is
therapeutic,
so
so
therapeutic,
healing,
so healing
that they cannot
that they
fight you.
cannot fight you.
And they gradually
And they
become more
gradually
and more
become
open.
more and more open.
Try it tonight
Try
with
it
your loved
tonight
one. You
with
see
your
two
loved one.
kids
You see
fighting,
two kids fighting,
just walk up to the
just walk
smaller
up
one
to
and
the
say,
smaller
honey,
one and say, honey,
you've got the
you've
pencil.
got the pencil.
No one can
No
talk
one can talk
until you feel
until you feel
understood.
understood.
And then,
And then,
as soon as you feel
as soon as you
understood,
feel understood,
and we make your
and we
point
make
to
your
your
point to your
satisfaction,
satisfaction,
then you pass it to
then you
your
pass it to your
older
older
sister or brother.
sister or brother.
Just try it.
Just try it.
You think it takes
You
time?
think it takes time?
It will save
It will
so
save
much
so
time.
much time.
And in your meetings
And
that
in
you
your
go to,
meetings that you go
basically
to,
you say,
basically you say,
let's agree to the
let's
simple
agree to
ground
the
rule
simple
that no
ground
one
rule
can
that
make
no
their
one can
point
make
until
their
they
point
restate
until
the
they
other
restate
person's
the other
point
person's
to
point
his or
to
her
his or her
satisfaction.
satisfaction.
When a problem, conflict, or mistake occurs, make observations or gather facts about what has occurred. Know your role and ask yourself what are the goals. Ensure you investigate beyond the current event or complaint. Generate alternative solutions. Select a solution and implement that solution. Evaluate the results. If the event was a complaint, follow up with the complainant to see if problems were resolved. When you're involved with handling a situation, control your emotions and ensure everyone is handled with appropriate sensitivity.
So here again, we used Video Scribe to create this, just to something somewhat interesting on, and it's going to happen in the next slide too. The next one is a little more interesting because we kind of move the graphic around a little bit and have some other graphics involved beyond just writing.
The previous slide showed a problem-solving method that works in the majority of situations when supervising people. But in our profession, you will find yourself in situations where you will need to stop an action to control imminent risks. We would like you to consider classifying these situations as immediate or delayed supervisory response situations. In our profession, you will find yourself in situations where you will need to stop an action to control imminent risks. We would like you to consider classifying these situations as immediate or delayed supervisory response situations. In immediate response situations, you will be required to act immediately to stop acts of an employee. Examples might include dangerous driving, incorrect firefighting tactics, non-use of personal protective equipment, an employee's action that may cause harm to them, you, or others. Due to organization reputation, some social media posts and HIPAA violations might fall into this an immediate response situation. In these situations, you will need to lead in the moment and work to preserve the relationship later. These situations are time-sensitive situations, and your immediate actions are only buying you the time to handle the situation in the more controlled delayed action format later. Immediate action responses, by supervisors, will almost always need to be followed up on later. In delayed action situations, you have time for fact-finding. You can prepare to meet with employee by referring to policies, procedures, guidelines and the collective bargaining agreement, if applicable. You control the timing and environment, which is usually a private office. These meetings are done in private to preserve employees' privacy. Remember to implement solutions and follow up on the employee later.
So I'm pretty happy with the video on this one. There was a couple of timing things that were just a little hard to work out because of the way the handwriting kind of thing goes in that video scribe. But we did work on slowing up and speeding up some of the graphics so they would kind of match up with the writing. Probably if we had more time, money, and production stuff, we could probably make it match just a little bit better. But for really using a trial version of Scribe and doing it for really, just myself and matching up the audio, I think it worked fairly well. In the next slide, this is where we actually have, it's kind of like the idea of that T-chart that was in the storyboard. And so we have set this up so that you pick it up and then you can drag them where they kind of go. And they turn green if you put on the right one. They turn red if you put on the wrong one. So it kind of gives before they even submit, so they have an idea. So, the first one we put down is chronically run reports, and we put that on the delayed side. We don't need to handle that immediately. We don't need to call people out in front of other employees for that. Not stopping or even slowing at controlled intersections when responding to a call. That's a supervisor stop action. We do that immediately so they don't get hurt. Same here with a not small disagreement. So the small disagreement would go on the delayed side. Reckless use of a saw at a fire scene would go on the immediate side, so we need to immediately stop that. Regularly late for shifts would go there on we can deal with that right in the delayed or traditional side. And then social media posts of a car accident where the victim could be recognized, especially if it was just posted. We want to get the employee to remove that post as quick as we can. And then she'll buy us the time then to deal with whatever fallout and what we need to do with the employee on the more traditional delayed side afterwards. So they were all correct. Surprise, surprise. And now we go to this slide.
Hey, Smitty. Hey, what do you got there, man?
Mouthwash.
So,
you are the supervisor. What is your next move? You and your classmates will discuss this with your instructor. Click Next or swipe to exit this part of the course, which should bring you back to the Noodle course shell. Proceed to the guided practice discussion forum.
So we chose to do this instead of it was like a video on a supervisor stop. I wanted in dealing with this and working through the material more and more, students have an opportunity before they went to simulation to talk to or discuss this with their classmates and instructor, so they can just have a basis to work from. So this is kind of like the real crawl part. We'll call if we look through the whole sequence of crawl, walk, run, this would be the crawl. The walk would be the simulations online, and then the run would be the in-person simulation. So I'll see you at the discussion forum. So I took a screenshot of the action just so that we have a place to start, or in the discussion forum description. We have a difficult time in the actual Noodle shell uploading or storing video because of video sizes. In scoring packages, we seem to be able to do it, but when we go through like just trying to upload a regular video, so I included the video in the articulate section just because of a logistical technical thing on our end, Fire Academy. So down here is our standard minimum participation guidelines, so that everybody makes a post by 6 p.m., which is 1800 hours on a certain date. And then you're supposed to read through your fellow students' posts and then respond by another certain date. And then you're supposed to discuss why they agree, why they don't agree. We have some ground rules, making sure that it's open, honest discussion for educational purposes, that, and also to be respectful. The concept here also is that the instructor will facilitate these conversations and bring out the teaching points in them. So from that point, we go on to supervisory simulation 1, which is kind of the meat and potatoes, at least for me, of this whole project. This is, we kind of had the idea to do these simulations, and we built the lesson to bring us to the simulations. So we had to take the driving footage off of YouTube, mainly because we didn't want to violate stop sign laws ourselves to film this. Some of it also was just for ease and to expedite the process. So here is the first choice, branching choice for the new supervisor. Obviously, again, video we downloaded just because it was driving through a red light on an actual street rather than trying to fake that in a video production environment. So let's see what happens if we talk to the driver after the call. So that kind of ends the video, and this was kind of some of the feedback we had from the students that there wasn't like an exit on this. And so we're going to go back and replay this real quickly so you can kind of see down a more appropriate branch of this particular simulation.
I'm fine. What's the problem?
So you can see this student has several choices. We go down through here. We chose one as it was kind of going along there. We'll choose this one right here this time.
You're right, Cap. Sorry, I'm just a little excited. Won't happen again.
So we have obviously a bunch of different choices. If you chose the other choice, there's a little flippant and says "Thanks, Captain Obvious." We went through and struggled with these. These are actually professional actors that were paid by Primex, which is a risk insurer for most municipalities in New Hampshire. The idea for these simulations kind of came from them. They had built simulations like these, but they weren't fire service specific, and they were more of a real generic office environment, which we felt that our audience wouldn't buy into the authenticity of those simulations, even though we loved the concept. So we were able to partner with them, and so they were able to pay for the actors. We were able to do video production, so filming and editing of the videos, and so it's been a good partnership to this whole project. They were also to also help us, in, as SMEs as far as how to build the simulations because they had done them before. We provided the simulations back to them in the articulate format so that if they wanted to use them in any of their particular supervisory classes, they could. So here we are, just to show you, we have a page in our Noodle set up for the discussion forum. Our discussion forums usually are designed so that the first post is from an instructor asking a question. So the question here would be, what are the next steps of this employee? What do you need to do? What are the follow-up? And from there, I mean, it depends on, we can kind of surmise some history and kind of elaborate on the discussion based on those points. The video is really short, and this again isn't your regular employee, so it's not a problem you've been working on all the time. But you would have to obviously move along with this. The driving is probably one of the more dangerous things we do on a regular everyday basis, whether it's responses or even just regular driving to inspections and maintenance work and those kind of things. So it's below cancer and heart disease, vehicle accidents for firefighters is one of the most dangerous things we do, and it's probably one of the more preventable causes of injury and death in our profession. So let's go into video supervisor simulation 2. And there we go. So again, you are the fire officer. You're given this situation here. We probably should have narrated this, and that may be a change for us in the future.
Check it out. I just posted this.
Is that John?
That is John.
Oh my gosh.
He's sleeping on the job.
Again? Wait, what does that say? John is a rod? Todd, you look at this. Look what he just posted about John. He's asleep down the hall, and he's posted John is a rod.
Man, that is rough.
He fell asleep again. John is a rod.
Oh my gosh.
You gotta make sure you get that up so that everybody can see it.
I already got a couple of responses.
Did you really?
So we're going to ask him right here, which is the wrong answer in front of everybody. Why did you post that? But this is a situation we're going to want to intervene in quickly. So it's kind of like a gray one as far as immediate or not immediate. But watch what Steve or what he does when he gets called out here in person.
You want to do this right? You want to do this right here? Come on, man. You're going to embarrass me in front of everybody?
So in this one, and a lot of the simulation stuff we've been doing, we try to build in points of redemption. The driving one, we didn't. You didn't talk to him right away. You get in an accident. There's no redeeming there. But now we have the opportunity to bring Steve to the office.
All right, you brought me into your office. You want to talk? Let's talk.
So we got some choices here to what to talk to Steve about. This is probably, I think the correct one is down here. What motivated you to do that? I know that's the correct one.
Yeah, I posted it. You think it's funny, don't you?
Again, these are the finite details on how you approach somebody. So no, I didn't, which is, it's capitalized, so you're kind of yelling at him. Think it was funny at all. I think it was stupid. Again, probably not the best way to handle somebody, so we're going to choose the other option. What do you think the possible problems with this could be?
Yeah, I guess I can see how John could take offense to this. And it could make the department look pretty bad. I guess I really didn't think before I posted it.
So that's video, the end of video simulation 2. Obviously, there's some other branches in there. Again, our goal at all times was to be authentic as possible with the behaviors, and even you notice they're probably a little more flippant than would be acceptable in some regular work environments. But with type A personalities and the things that we ask them to do, when you ask people to go into burning buildings. Sometimes the personalities are a little more vibrant than you deal with in other workplaces. So we wanted to make sure our students were A, ready for that as supervisors, and B, also felt that the materials we're given were authentic. From here, the student would then proceed to class, and then we would do the in-person simulation and give them the feedback. We discussed a lot of that earlier when I was going through the storyboard for the whole process with you. So I'm going to end it here. Hopefully you can watch this, and then we can communicate on what else I need to do to finish this course.